So yeah, thank you for having a listening this privacy talk. Today I invited Kavya. Um, she's the expert of XR technologies, which is the very brilliant the emergencies, but we have a lot of controversial space. I'm very glad to have a talk with her and pretty exciting with me and with all the listeners through the privacy talks. So let's move on to interviews. So Kavya, please introduce of yourself and your background and what you're doing there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kohei, for inviting me to this privacy talk, essentially. So much focused on privacy, whereas I'm sitting here at the cross section of XR and privacy. So it's a great timing for myself and I think for the industry to be talking about this subject. So a little bit about myself. I am Kavya Pearlman. I am the founder and CEO of XR Safety Initiative, XRSI. XRSI is a 501c3 non-for-profit, and I was listening to some of your podcasts. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
Omer had explained in detail what a non-for-profit is. I'm not going to go into those details, but it essentially means we are not working for profit. We have a different revenue model, and we work together with a mission to help build safe immersive environments or XR technologies, you can say
Mm-hmm.
it. And we do that by working together with individuals, corporations, universities, government agencies, and essentially we try to curate knowledge to put together impartial, practical, and XR related risk information, and then put together standards, knowledge-based documentation, and then we basically try to um, spread awareness around all the risks that could be, that could come along with these extended realities. And in the process, of course, when we talk about risk, privacy is one of those areas where we are anticipating some new type of ways how our data may not be protected because we are moving too fast or using these technologies. So it's a very interesting cross section that we're sitting at, and I'm really honored to be here today and be able to do this. And in fact, I should talk about why I'm doing this a little bit more. Is prior to starting XRSI, which started in 2019 in April, I was actually a head of security for a gaming company called Linden Lab. Linden Lab had this, massive multiplayer online gaming platform called Second Life, which is, considered like the oldest existing virtual world. And during my time, they also rolled out something called as CNSR, which was a VR platform, another virtual reality app, basically. So I sort of learned, how virtual reality and, in general, XR has these completely new risks that emerge. And some of them we are still learning about what could those be. And we have to sort of stay ahead of it. And then prior to that, in about 2016, I was also advising Facebook for third-party security risks. And when I was doing this work, I learned a lot about different types of technologies, different levels of technologies and scales of technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of this experience gave me this unique ability to anticipate risks accurately, and especially when it comes to like new and emerging technologies. So with all these experience, and back in the days, in about 2012, I did my master's in network security. I also
Mm-hmm.
have worked for a corporate immigration law firm. As my first security job, I worked at a security operations center, handling cyber attacks at the front lines. So all of these experiences kind of gave me this unique ability. And now, after leaving Linden Lab, I just wanted to help the industry
Mm-hmm.
better understand what could go wrong when we move fast or when we adopt these technologies, which we must. I want to be in a place where we enable moving fast, where we enable digital transformation or
Mm-hmm.
moving on to emerging technologies.
Yeah, thank you. That's pretty amazing that you had experiences this so far. I just watched some of your videos, the interview. It was very amazed why you had started this kind of the new activities, because so many technologies are coming out this moment, but it's a very rare to work around the emergencies such as the XR. A lot of the people is try to buy anything like the like Facebook products or any gaming products, but the problem is we haven't the specific territories, which is the borderlines of privacy or utilities. So this is a very key topics. So let's look into about your activity or Excel Safety Initiative. So you're working on the many things there. The
Yeah.
very amazing output I saw that your website. So
Yeah.
what is the final purpose? What is your focus areas you're working on these
Right.
activities?
So I think we have three principles.
Mhm.
One is we are unbiased, we are ethical, and we remain true to our mission. And then our mission is to help build safe XR ecosystems. So that's really just like the core of it. We're trying to create impartial, very ethical, very like sort of unbiased ways of building these technologies and helping people understand how to do that. So we have about four main programs at the moment. One of them is a diversity and inclusion effort. It's called Cyber XR Coalition,
Mhm.
where lots of different organizations that care about diversity, but their focus could be cybersecurity, their focus could be XR. I sort of brought these 12 different organizations together to then really think about what does it mean for what does it mean to be inclusive
Mhm.
in XR? What does it mean to have diversity in XR? So just started focusing on that and started building standards and whatnot. Another initiative we have is because when we are using these very compelling XR technologies, we have to think about children, and this
Mhm.
is a whole new domain itself. In fact, post COVID, about 1.5 billion children have moved online, so along comes the risk, and now people are looking into these virtual reality, augmented reality technologies, but we still don't know like what could be the psychological impact on children. So we thought
Mhm.
that is a really important one. Another effort that we are working on, and this is going to be later in August, we are going to announce a very key partnership. It's a medical XR council. It's like a
Mhm.
subject matter experts from all sorts of domains, cybersecurity, medical, and all other fields. But main concern is to build sort of a baseline standards when we use these devices or XR technologies for medical use, because right now we don't even know what kind of data those things collect and how those gets transferred and all. So we want to put some protocols and some kind of a basic guidelines in place and sort of evolve over time. And then the final one is Ready Hacker One, which is
Mhm.
our awareness effort. So imagine when we have like this deep fake propaganda and
Mhm.
all these other very like intrusive ways to manipulate our brains. Where
Mhm.
would you go to find the truth? So what we're saying is, when it comes to XR, we must have a platform that people can trust, and that's why this awareness and effort is going to be something like where you could go read about what is the real truth about a certain technology. So we'll
Mhm.
filter out all the noise or any biases, and we'll at least make an attempt and try to make awareness campaigns, such as like installing an AR art to tell people seeing is no longer believing, like
Mhm.
new ways to try to create awareness in people's mind and cultivate that critical thinking. So that's like our final awareness effort, which is really, really important too.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. So I'm very curious about this space because it's a very emergencies. It's not the familiarized in the society at this moment. So what do you think is the most critical issues in the technical side in the XR technology at this moment?
Right. And, Koei, if you permit me, I'm going to take a little bit of a moment to just go on a limb to explain a little bit about XR, because
Mm.
most of the times we make an assumption that if somebody
And
is listening to us about privacy, they may know about XR, which is really not true. A lot of privacy super experts may not know about XR. A lot of other audience may not know. So I want to just take a moment to explain what is XR.
mm,
So XR is essentially, and past couple of years, because there has been this sort of debate around these taxonomies, and it won't be wrong to say, like, if I would say a war of words. So I would like to take this moment to at least define, like, extended reality is like this umbrella term, which is referred to every time you extend reality to through a different medium. It could be virtual reality, it could be augmented reality, it could be a combination of many different other technologies, mixed reality. And basically, it really just gives us this, combination of virtual and real environment to power interaction between machine and humans.
I see.
In fact, we wanted to take the next step, and that's exactly, so we standardize some of these terms and put out some standards around it, like what is, so essentially what is virtual reality is, kind of a fully immersive environment in a digital environment. So you imagine you can, like, sort of assist somebody, you can assist, virtually, you can repair engines, and you can help architect envision what a retail space would look like when they don't even know, what exactly is going to happen in the future. So it's like, allows you to sort of look into the future, create dreamlike experiences and whatnot. And I think augmented reality, we're all familiar with, where, sort of a digital overlay on your real world environment. And when it comes to mixed reality, you can sort of, like, use virtual reality to manipulate your real world environment. So let me go back to the question that you had asked, like, what's sort of different, or what are the concerns? So I know that in recent few years, there has been a lot of laws that have come about, like GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, and most recently we have California Consumer Privacy Act, at least out here in the West. And, in Japan, or in the Asian country, you have Apec. So what we are really trying to do when it comes to XR and the cross section is, like, okay, all these laws and the privacy guidelines that exist, how can they apply to these emerging technologies? And then what are the gaps? Like, what should be the new user rights, and how should they be communicated? Because now we're talking about, like, taking these headsets and putting them on, but should we just, like, click one box and that says, all my privacy goes out the window? Or what does that even mean? Because sometimes, when we're talking about augmented reality, we're talking about AR glasses becoming more ubiquitous. And when that happens, we're living in an era of constant reality capture. So what does that mean for privacy? So we're still, like, sort of trying to understand this cross section. And we know that the impact is really massive, because these technologies can collect so much data. And so we are highly concerned what could go wrong, and are trying to really understand and provide solutions to that effect.
I see. Yeah, in this COVID-19, there's some Japanese companies is also developing like a virtual cities where we can go there. When you took the specific headset or anything, you can be a part of it. It's just in the very similar realities in virtual worlds. The people is as if they were there, having the same playing in any entertainment there, having a talk with the kids, friends, families there, doing any activities together. In the cases, we have going to different worlds, we have a different feelings, a different environment. In the sense that how we can deal this kind of the human life is a very important. Also, it's very complex. What is the definition with that? Yeah, I think it's a pretty good part with it.
Yeah, I would say it is one of those compelling technologies, especially post-COVID, where we want to be together, but we have to stay apart. And this is not a situation that is one time. I'm pretty sure we might have very similar situation come up, maybe due to climate change, where we may not be able to leave our houses because there is a catastrophe going on outside, and there could be any other pandemic that go on. So it is really important that we take to these technologies. I'm actually kind of very enthusiastic about it, but I'm also a little bit skeptical, and I'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
the reason why. Well, one of the reasons is there is an organization called Future of Privacy Forum,
Mm-hmm.
and in 2020 they put out a research which outlines top 10 technologies that will create increasingly complex data protection challenges over the
Mm-hmm.
decades. And of course, spatial computing, some of the people call it, or XR technologies, is one of those top 10 technologies that of course creates these privacy challenges. And then managing these challenges
Mm-hmm.
would require trained people and thinking about human dimension to review the products, to review
Mm-hmm.
these services. And we have to think about the biases that we will put into these, that inevitably will be captured in these platforms, and
Mm-hmm.
how these tools that will analyze what is happening to the data and
Mm-hmm.
provide data protection. Um, Let me share with you this one particular other
Yeah.
study. So I'm sure all of us kind of are familiar with Cambridge Analytica,
Mm-hmm.
the biggest privacy
Yeah.
scandal of our times, pretty much. And so, Cambridge Analytica, a political data firm that was hired by President Trump's 2016 election
Mm-hmm.
campaign, gained unauthorized access and to private information up to 87 million user data in the
Mm-hmm.
United States. And then the firm offered to, identify a specific personality type of voters and influence their behavior. And then they claimed that they had 5,000 unique data points on each US citizens,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they could use these 5,000 data points to advertise, target, advertise, manipulate behavior, or manipulate users during this election time.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's look at this other research. So with VR, or with augmented reality, virtual reality, specifically, I'm talking about VR in this case, is you can record personal data, people's
Mm-hmm.
location, how they are socially tied to each other, verbal communication, of course, anything that we say,
Mm-hmm.
eyes. The worst part is the non-verbal behavior. It's like the
Um,
user's posture, your eyes, your gaze, your gesture, your facial expression,
mm-hmm.
even your interpersonal distance, and just all of these things, like the way I move my head could be inferred as to, oh, that's definitely Kavya, or my voice and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So according to a Stanford study, 20 minutes of VR game session recorded 2 million data points about
Um,
a human body movement. So now compare what happened with 5,000 unique data points, and then we're
I
talking
see.
about
Yeah.
within 20 minutes, you can grab that kind of a very intrusive data.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
given this enormous amount of data collection, given the blurred lines of accountability, oh, it was not Cambridge
Mm-hmm.
Analytica's fault, or it was not Facebook's fault, we have to think about and pause, like, what could be our next Cambridge Analytica scandal, and what could that look like?
I see.
So that's what is, right, really frightening at times. But I think it's time that we pause and try to devise ways to stay ahead of these risks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I didn't imagine that too many data is been collected to the products, the companies, without any specific consent. I guess it's a very hard to convince all the data from yours. So in the cases, I think it's very important to consider the ethics driven the product making, especially like a kid, a child is allowed to use the VR, these technologies, as well as like the problem that TikTok is in a COPPA, the American
Yeah.
children data privacy law, which is the very strict, as well as in the South Korea is prohibited there, as well as the other countries is been considerations. So in
Yeah.
this sense, like how we can prevent the kids' privacy, in particular of the XR technology space.
And that is a really profound question. And it's a good question that we should be asking as an industry, even as
Mm,
privacy professionals. But at the cross section of XR, we must specifically ask that, because even till today, we don't know what's an appropriate age for a child to be in these virtual or augmented reality
mm, mm,
environments. We don't know that. So we have this complete lack of sort of standard guidelines. One thing also we have noticed is, as you mentioned, COPPA, for example,
mm,
or any other laws, privacy laws that we look at when it comes to children's parents' protection. Uh, it falls short. And why does it fall short? Because children's data privacy regulations are anchored on the principle of parental consent. So parents will approve up to certain ages, but look, kids are so savvy. You said about TikTok, right? So kids are now like, you can tell a 12-year-old not to use TikTok, but kids are very, very savvy these days, and they would they would definitely use these technologies. You can't always rely on parental consent. In fact, my work as a head of security, when I was dealing with these problems, this is just check the box for kids. People pretend to be kids, be adults, and to be able to, take
I
on.
see.
Yeah. So when it comes to kid privacy, of course, it's a huge concern for XR. We have an entire sort of program dedicated to it, Child Safety Initiative, where we recently, Child Safety Initiative contributed to a standard baseline documentation where we did some research around these areas and came up with just, what should be the objective, which would be prevent online harm, create age-appropriate design. So if you are a gaming company, or if you are a virtual reality, augmented reality studio, then you should think about, what is an age-appropriate design if you're targeting kids. And some of the guidance actually exist in, age-appropriate design code published by UK's ICO. And then a bunch of other guidance exists, but they're just not so comprehensive or specific to XR. And that's kind of what we're doing, is like using this knowledge to now help device, let's say, prevention oriented. So, like a lot of the users will have like experience that looks as real, but like we have to think about what could be the psychological impact on these kids when they experience XR. And there could be a long-term effect. So I believe when it comes to protecting kids, it should start with awareness. We should be aware of what is our moral responsibility as parents, as teacher, but also as the organizations that are building applications for children, or the possibility that kids will inevitably, use this headset and try to, tinker with technology. So start with awareness. And then I think we need to move to incentivizing in doing good things. So incentivize kids to do good behavior, incentivize companies to do better privacy protection. And if that sort of fails, then we need to definitely rely on our regulations, which absolutely need to be updated to prevent and protect and be proactive with kids. We can't rely on the check the box, parents say yes, and it goes. So ultimately enforce these things so that, kids are actually protected, and there is like consequences for when you monitor some kind of grooming or some other risky activities going on. So I think we have to look at not just privacy, but like safety. We're worried about safety of our kids, and privacy is definitely just another part of it that we have to care about.
I see. Yeah, this safety is a very good words to be a more protective, as well as be a more great zone where the kids can easy to use these new technologies to advance, like educational space or self-running. The many things will be coming to the virtual world. From the future perspective, so what kind of experiences these XR technology will be making in the futures from your ideas?
And I'm actually really intrigued that you caught on the word safety, and that's another shift that I'm trying to make, and XRSI is trying to make, is going from not thinking about just privacy or security or ethics to thinking about safety and trust. Because, in the traditional system, we're talking about network or our computer or machine, but these technologies impact our brain, which means trust and safety is at stake. These technologies expand to our living room when we are, moving around in VR or AR outside the living room. One could get hit by a bus if there is a wrong, pop-up or something, and that directs a person in a wrong direction. So yeah, safety and trust is probably the key word of these technologies. So you asked me, what is how how the current gaps are in privacy and how it can
Yeah.
be improved in a sense. So
Mhm.
um, we have to look at existing practices, like what's really going on with
Mhm.
respect to people's data, how these laws are setting the transparency requirement. And clearly, we know that they are not sufficient. They're not sufficient to inform people what is going on with the data. So what we do is mostly is we inform people what we're going to do with your data through privacy policy,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is fine, but I don't think it's going to work for XR. I don't think just a privacy policy is going to work. We need to devise better ways to continuously informing
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
also segment this a little bit. So it's not just like one checkbox and off my data goes to this other
Mhm.
organization, which
Mhm.
we don't know what they'll do, but we need to devise better, more innovative ways. Maybe there is a layered approach to privacy or something. And
Mhm.
secondly, we have to determine at least like the very basic minimum standards, like legal standards that we
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
use to enforce these practices and empower people to make like better choices instead of just like, check the box and, here's this 70-page privacy policy nobody
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
understands. So like more of a, design choices, like what's better for us, what's better for us as a human versus like, how companies sometimes do. They try to just grab your attention, or they are most interested in getting the most
Mhm.
data. So
Mhm.
we need to make like a privacy focused design choices. And then once we make those type of choices, once the organizations understand, then we can sort of have this hope that there is there's work that will essentially help us get ahead in privacy or be proactive
Mhm.
about handling it.
Yeah, I could imagine that you said to me that's the very important to make um, the user focused experiences through the virtual actual reality. In that sense, it's a very different argument from the one single privacy policy. It's not just like a user action. It's just a kind of the natural actions from the user experience, which is the new kind of the definitions of the privacy making. So
Yeah.
that's very good.
Yeah, and
So yeah.
I also want to add to it because remember, as I started this conversation, I talked
Mm-hmm.
about it's a good day to have this conversation. In fact, we've tried to schedule this before, and then it just happened so that we
No, no.
scheduled this interview today, which is great because we had the very first session, like a breakout session for this other effort, which is a very privacy in XR focused effort where we have brought together all these researchers and we are trying to come up with a very default, like a baseline privacy and compliance guide
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for XR and spatial data applications. So essentially, we want to collaborate with uh, platforms all across XR, people that are just interested in XR,
Mm-hmm.
privacy experts that already know so much about these data frame, like privacy frameworks, ICO UK, let's say. We want to invite European Commission.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely want to invite folks in the Japanese domain, like, if folks that are familiar with Apec or any organization that is sort of interested in this sort of a privacy and XR cross section. So I wanted to throw that out there because if you had talked to me 2 weeks ago, I may not have been able to give you this information, but at least, after all these scary stuff that we talked about, we have some hope. These
Mm-hmm.
kinds of efforts are happening. In fact, Facebook had just released a white paper talking about privacy and, how should we do better privacy. They call
Mm-hmm.
it people-centered privacy. So I know that people are already sort of beginning to know that this is it, like this is time, we have to do this, and we are doing this ourselves. I encourage everyone to think about this cross section. And if it is interesting to you,
Mm-hmm.
then you should reach out and get involved in this. Even if it's like, information only, you want to be a fly on the wall, you can email to info@xrsi.org. And, we have our liaison organization that's working with us, OpenAR Cloud. And so together we are bringing these experts to, again, do just like a baseline attempt to really understand what's there, what's missing and what can go into the future framework of XR.
Yeah, that's very amazing. Yeah, I saw that some of your Twitter posts where the many updates to the coming in the space, like a big company is invested a lot in this space, like Facebook, Xiaomi, as well as there's some Japanese player like Sony, other gaming companies.
That's correct.
So my last question with you is, we have some Japanese gaming companies are working on XR space. Of course, there's some other Asian companies like from China. So please share your message to them. So what kind of the privacy or data perspectives from experiences?
Sure, and I had to a little bit do a little bit research as I knew I was speaking with somebody who is more familiar with the Japanese side of things. So I looked at APEC, the APEC privacy framework that you have for Asian enterprises that most of these APEC members economies lean on when they want to do data transfer or when for any kind of information flows. So what I would say to most people who are familiar with APEC or lean on this thing, and APEC has these 9 principles, and then GDPR in the EU has about 6 principles of what is essential for privacy. All in all, they're pretty much talking about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to these existing laws or these existing frameworks, what I would advise to the gaming, VR, and augmented reality companies is that lean on the existing infrastructure and existing principles, and they will get you somewhat far. But then you have to proactively take the next step to build that safety and trust with your folks, with your constituents, with your people. I mean, I'm talking about governments have to be proactive and think about how this data could potentially be weaponized to use against them, to use against your constituents, your country sometimes. So we have to lean on the existing framework, but then stay in touch with efforts like what we have with respect to, we're building this privacy guide. Another suggestion, which I know that I think Japan is great when it comes to emerging technologies, but as we embrace these emerging technologies, and what's that, like artificial intelligence, machine learning, 5G is like a huge catalyst to perpetuate XR and take it to the whole another level with crazy amount of speed and data transfer possibilities. So 5G and then brain computer interfaces is another sort of a technology that crosses with XR. So collectively, we really have to just keep pace with what's going on. And one of the things, just couple of weeks ago, I was listening to another partner of ours that does a bit of work of awareness in Japanese in Japan or in Asian countries. They talked about the language barrier. So things that you perceive and understand in English, because most of these frameworks are written in English, in Japanese they're different. So I feel there is this extra effort that has to be made to stay on the same page as the rest of the world, kind of, call it like a language barrier or something. So we have to truly understand, in all languages, what is at stake, what are the existing framework, and then what do we have to do, and just basically stay up to date with these technologies as we go forward.
Yeah, that's great message. So I think it's a time to we are working on this space, regardless of where you are living. They also what you're working on. This is a very key word. They also your activity is very important for the new technologies. They also the users' perspective. So Kavya, thank you for coming this time to the interviews. Let's keep updated and making a collaboration together. Thank you for today's.
Thank you for inviting me. Take care.
Thank you.